Only those with noble lineage can stay in this house. My mother-in-law's words hung in the warm Caribbean air like a toxic cloud. I watched her face twist into that familiar sneer, the one I'd endured for the past 5 years. Next to her, Thomas, my husband, nodded in agreement, his expression a perfect mirror of his mother's contempt. "Darling, I think it's best if you leave," he said, not even bothering to look me in the eye. The fury building inside me was different this time. Not the usual hurt and shame that had accompanied their constant belittling. No, this was something else, something powerful. I felt my lips curve into a smile as I turned to the security guard standing discreetly by the door. "Would you please escort them off my resort property?" The look of shock on their faces was priceless. Thomas's jaw dropped, and his mother's perfectly Botoxed forehead actually managed to wrinkle. I watched as their eyes darted to the elegant brass plaque behind me, the one bearing my family name, the same name that adorned every building in this luxury resort complex. This can't be possible," my mother-in-law stammered, her perfectly manicured hand clutching her pearl necklace. "You're just a small-town girl from Minnesota. Your father was a carpenter." "A carpenter who invested wisely and built an empire," I corrected her, my voice steady and clear. "Did you never wonder why I insisted on having the wedding here? I wanted to give you the benefit of the doubt, to see if you could accept me for who I am, not what I own." The security guard stepped forward, professional and polite. Thomas reached for my arm, but I stepped back, removing my wedding ring in one fluid motion. "As for the grand wedding you've been planning for your son and his new girlfriend," I said, noting their guilty expressions, "I have something special in mind for that too." Looking back, I should have seen the signs, the secret phone calls, the late nights at the office, the subtle changes in Thomas's behavior. But I had been too busy running my family's business empire in secret, hoping that one day my husband's family would see past their prejudices and accept me for who I was. That day, standing in the lobby of my flagship resort, I finally understood that some people would never change. The real question was, why had I spent so long trying to change myself to please them? As they were escorted out, my phone buzzed with a message from my assistant. Everything was in place for what would come next. Thomas and his mother had no idea what they had just set in motion. Their perfect world of social climbing and false pretenses was about to come crashing down, and I would be there to watch every moment of it. But first, I had a resort to run and a truth to reveal, one that would shake the foundations of their carefully constructed social hierarchy. The carpenter's daughter they had looked down upon for so long was about to teach them a lesson in true class and dignity. What they didn't know was that this was just the beginning. The wedding they were planning behind my back would indeed take place, just not in the way they expected. I had something much more interesting in store for their perfect day. I stood at the window of my penthouse office, watching as Thomas and his mother were escorted to their waiting car. 5 years of pretending to be less than I was, all because I believed that love meant accepting people as they were. What a fool I'd been. My father's words echoed in my mind. "Never let anyone make you feel small, Sophie. We build things, not just resorts, but futures." He'd started with a small carpentry business and transformed it into a hospitality empire through sheer determination and brilliant business acumen. When he passed away 3 years ago, I inherited not just his legacy, but his vision. The day I met Thomas at a charity gala, I thought I'd found someone who saw me for who I was. He was charming, seemingly kind, and appeared genuinely interested in my thoughts and dreams. I didn't tell him about my family's business. I wanted to be loved for myself, not my bank account. What an ironic twist that turned out to be. "Ms. Reynolds?" My assistant Sarah appeared at the door. "I have those files you requested." I turned from the window, composing myself. "Show me." She laid out several folders on my desk. Inside were photographs, email transcripts, and bank statements, all meticulously documenting Thomas's betrayal. The affair with Jessica, his mother's preferred choice for a daughter-in-law, had been going on for 8 months. The wedding they were planning behind my back was scheduled for next spring, at this very resort. "They've already put down deposits under different names," Sarah explained, pointing to a series of transactions. Mrs. Lancaster has been working with her personal wedding planner for weeks. I couldn't help but laugh at the audacity. My mother-in-law had always been clever, but this time her scheming would be her undoing. Have you contacted our lawyers? Yes. Given the prenuptial agreement's infidelity clause, everything is in our favor. But, Sarah hesitated. But what? They're planning to contest your ownership of the resort chain. Mrs. Lancaster has been gathering what she claims is evidence that your father's initial investment came from questionable sources. My blood ran cold. Of course, that explained the recent break-in at our old family home and the mysterious questions about my father's early business partners. They weren't just planning to leave me. They were trying to destroy everything my father had built. I walked to the small safe hidden behind a painting in my office. Inside was a worn leather journal. My father's detailed account of every deal, every investment, every step of building his empire. He'd known someday someone might question his legacy. Sarah, call Michael at the Times. It's time for that interview they've been requesting. The world should know the true story of how a carpenter built one of the most successful resort chains in the Caribbean. I paused, a plan forming in my mind. And find out everything you can about Jessica's family. Something tells me Thomas and his mother aren't the only ones with secrets to hide. As Sarah left, I opened my father's journal, running my fingers over his familiar handwriting. I'd kept silent about my true identity for so long, believing it was the right thing to do. Now I realized that my silence had only enabled their prejudice and cruelty. My phone buzzed. A message from Thomas. We need to talk. This isn't what you think. Oh, but it was exactly what I thought. And while he and his mother plotted their next move, probably huddled in their overpriced beachfront villa, they had no idea what I had discovered in their own carefully hidden past. The sun was setting over the Caribbean, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink. Somewhere in one of our other resorts, a USB drive contained information that would make today's revelation look like a minor scandal. Thomas's family had spent generations building their reputation as old money nobility. I smiled, thinking of the document I'd found in my father's old files. It was time to show them what real power looked like, not the kind bought with stolen money and fake titles, but the kind built with honest work and integrity. But first, I had a wedding to plan. Not mine, not anymore, but it would certainly be an event no one would ever forget. The morning after Thomas and his mother's humiliating exit, I sat in my home office reviewing the files Sarah had compiled. Each page revealed another layer of deception that made my stomach turn. The Lancaster family's carefully constructed facade was beginning to crack, and what lay beneath was uglier than I'd imagined. Your father's old partner is on line 1, Sarah announced through the intercom. Mr. Davidson says it's urgent. James Davidson. I hadn't heard that name in years. He'd been my father's best friend during the early days, before a falling out drove them apart. I picked up the phone, my heart racing. Sophie. His gruff voice brought back memories of summer barbecues and business meetings around our old kitchen table. I heard about what happened at the resort. It's time you knew the truth about Thomas's family. For the next hour, I listened as James unraveled a story that left me breathless. The Lancasters' noble lineage was built on a lie, one that started 3 generations ago with Thomas's grandfather. They weren't old money at all. They were con artists who had perfected the art of marrying into wealthy families and slowly siphoning away their fortunes. Your father figured it out, James explained. That's why I left. He wanted to expose them, but I was scared. They had connections, Sophie. Dangerous ones. I thought about the USB drive hidden in my father's old briefcase. Did they have anything to do with Dad's accident? The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. I can't prove it, James finally said. But your father was getting close to exposing their whole operation. The brake failure in his car. It was too convenient. My hands shook as I opened my laptop and pulled up the file I'd found in my father's encrypted drive. It contained detailed records of the Lancaster family's activities over the past 50 years, a paper trail of broken marriages, emptied bank accounts, and ruined lives. Why didn't you tell me this when I married Thomas? I asked, trying to keep the anger from my voice. Your father made me promise to let you live your life. He thought Thomas might be different. James sighed heavily. I'm sorry, Sophie. I should have warned you. After hanging up, I called Sarah into my office. I need you to contact every bride who's booked our resorts for the next year. Offer them a significant upgrade, but move them all to our other properties. Keep the main resort empty for next spring. For the wedding? Sarah asked, raising an eyebrow. Yes, but not just that. I want to give the Lancasters exactly what they want. A grand stage for their perfect society wedding. And then, I smiled, thinking of the documents in my possession. I want to give them what they deserve. Later that afternoon, I received an unexpected visitor. Jessica's younger sister, Rachel, stood in my office, looking nervous but determined. I know what my sister and Thomas are doing, she blurted out. And I know what happened to the Morrison family last year and the Blackwoods before that. It's their pattern. Find someone wealthy, marry them, destroy them. I can't let them do it again. I studied her carefully. Why are you telling me this? Because you're different. You're the first one who's fought back. She pulled out a phone, hands trembling. I have recordings. Conversations between Thomas and Jessica. They're planning something worse than just leaving you. They want everything. The resorts, your reputation, all of it. As I listened to the recordings, a chill ran down my spine. Thomas's voice was cold, calculating. Nothing like the man I thought I'd married. They weren't just planning to divorce me. They were going to frame me for financial fraud, using doctored documents to make it look like I'd been embezzling from my own company. Thank you, Rachel, I said, after the last recording ended. This changes everything. That evening, as I watched the sunset from my office, I received another message from Thomas. Let's handle this like adults. Dinner tomorrow? Just you and me. I typed back a simple response. The Blue Room, 8 p.m. What Thomas didn't know was that the Blue Room, our most exclusive restaurant, had been my father's favorite place to close deals and to expose frauds. Every table was equipped with hidden recording equipment, originally installed to protect our high-profile guests from corporate espionage. Tomorrow night, Thomas would try to manipulate me one last time. But this time, I would be ready. This time, I would be the one in control. As I prepared for bed that night, I received one final message, this one from an unknown number. Be careful. They've done this before, and their last victim didn't survive to tell the tale. I stared at the message, my blood running cold. Suddenly, this wasn't just about saving my family's legacy. It was about survival. The Blue Room was quiet that evening, exactly as I'd arranged it. I'd cleared the restaurant of other guests, leaving only the essential staff, each one personally vetted and loyal to my family for years. Thomas arrived precisely at 8, wearing the navy suit I'd given him for our last anniversary. The irony wasn't lost on me. Sophie, he smiled that charming smile that had once made my heart flutter. Now it just made my skin crawl. You look lovely. I'd chosen my outfit carefully. A simple black dress that had belonged to my mother. It seemed fitting to wear something that represented genuine family history while facing a man whose entire life was built on lies. Let's skip the pleasantries, Thomas, I said, taking my seat. We both know why we're here. He ordered an expensive wine, my wine, from my cellar, and leaned back in his chair. This whole situation has gotten out of hand. You've always been emotional, darling, but this dramatic display of yours is beneath you. I thought of Rachel's recordings, of James's warnings, of my father's suspicious accident. My hand tightened around my water glass, but my voice remained steady. Tell me about the Morrison family. The slight twitch in his left eye was the only indication that I'd caught him off guard. I don't know what you're talking about. Elizabeth Morrison, age 32, inherited a chain of luxury hotels from her father, married a charming man named James Lancaster, your uncle. Within a year, she lost everything. They found her car at the bottom of a cliff 3 months later. Ancient family history, he waved dismissively, but I noticed his knuckles whitening around his wine glass. And completely irrelevant to us. Then let's talk about something more recent. Like the prenup your mother's lawyers are trying to invalidate, or the documents you've been fabricating to frame me for embezzlement. This time he couldn't hide his shock. Our eyes met across the table, and for the first time I saw the real Thomas. Cold, calculating, and suddenly very dangerous. "You've been busy," he said softly, "but you're playing a game you don't understand, Sophie. Some things are better left alone. Like my father's accident." The words hung in the air between us. Thomas took a slow sip of wine, studying me over the rim of his glass. "Accidents happen all the time in construction. Your father knew the risks. He knew other things too, about your family, about what happened to the real Lancasters. That got his attention." "What are you talking about?" I reached into my purse and pulled out a single photograph. It was old, yellowed at the edges. A group of people standing in front of a mansion. "Your grandfather isn't in this photo, Thomas, but the real Charles Lancaster is. The man whose identity he stole after the fire that conveniently killed the entire family." Thomas's face went pale. "Where did you get that?" My father was thorough in his research. He believed in knowing who he was dealing with. I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. He also believed in backups. Lots of them. Hidden in places your family would never think to look. The waiter appeared with our appetizers. Thomas barely noticed, his eyes fixed on the photograph. "What do you want?" he finally asked. "I want you to understand something. Every document you've forged, every lie you've told, every plan you and Jessica made, I have proof of all of it. Right now, it's all safely locked away. But if anything happens to me, anything at all, it goes public. All of it." "You're bluffing." But his voice lacked conviction. I pulled out my phone and played a short audio clip. His own voice discussing plans to frame me for financial crimes. His face went from pale to ashen. "That's just a sample," I said, stopping the recording. "I have hours more. Your mother's involvement, Jessica's role, everything. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to sign the divorce papers my lawyers have prepared. You're going to take your mother and Jessica and leave. Not just the resort, the country. Or what? Or I finish what my father started. Every scam, every stolen identity, every suspicious death, all of it comes to light. How long do you think your noble family would last once the truth gets out?" The look he gave me was pure hatred. "You don't know what you're doing. There are people involved in this who won't hesitate to what? Stage another accident?" I smiled coldly. "Do you really think I haven't taken precautions?" Just then, my phone buzzed with a message from Sarah. "They're in position. Everything is ready." I stood up, smoothing my dress. "One more thing. Look out the window." Thomas turned. In the parking lot below, police cars were pulling up silently, their lights off. As we watched, officers began taking up positions around the building. "Insurance," I explained. "Plus, they're very interested in some evidence that's recently come to light about Elizabeth Morrison's death. Your uncle may have gotten away with it then, but forensic science has come a long way." "You bitch," he whispered. "No, Thomas. I'm a businesswoman. You just never bothered to notice." I headed for the door, then paused. "Oh, and the wedding you and Jessica were planning? Don't worry, the venue is still yours. In fact, I insist. I have something very special planned for the occasion." As I walked out of the Blue Room, I heard him call my name. I didn't turn around. Let him wonder what I had planned. Let him worry about what else I might know. Because the truth was, I was just getting started. I barely slept that night. The adrenaline from my confrontation with Thomas kept my mind racing, replaying every micro-expression, every subtle threat. By dawn, I was in my home office, reviewing security footage from the Blue Room. Something about Thomas's reaction to my mentions of Elizabeth Morrison bothered me. "Ms. Reynolds?" Sarah's voice came through the intercom. "Detective Wilson is here." I'd been expecting this visit. The detective entered my office, looking tired but alert. She'd been investigating cold cases involving suspicious accidents in wealthy families for years. When I'd contacted her department with evidence about Elizabeth Morrison's death, she'd jumped at the chance to reopen the case. "The recording from last night is quite interesting," she said, settling into a chair. "But it's what we found in Elizabeth Morrison's exhumed car that's really got my attention." I leaned forward. "What did you find?" "The same type of brake line damage as your father's car. Too similar to be coincidence." She pulled out a tablet, showing me photographs. We also found traces of a substance that wasn't available when the original investigation was conducted. Something that proves the brake lines were deliberately cut. My throat tightened. Can you prove who did it? Not yet, but... Her phone buzzed. The color drained from her face as she read the message. Mrs. Reynolds, we need to move you to a safe location, now. What's wrong? Thomas's uncle, James Lancaster, the one who married Elizabeth Morrison? He just broke out of house arrest. And your mother-in-law was seen visiting him yesterday. A chill ran down my spine. James Davidson's warnings about dangerous connections suddenly felt very real. Within hours, I was settled into a secure suite at one of my other properties, surrounded by enhanced security. Sarah had arranged for all resort operations to continue smoothly in my absence, but something still felt off. My phone rang. Rachel, Jessica's sister. Sophie, thank God you're safe, she sounded breathless. They're planning something. I overheard Jessica on the phone with Thomas's mother. They mentioned something about a backup plan, something about the resort's opening celebration next month. The annual gala, our biggest event of the year. Hundreds of guests, international media coverage, and the governor, I whispered. The governor always attends. Sophie, there's more. Rachel's voice dropped. I found old photos in my parents' attic. Photos of my father with Thomas's uncle from 20 years ago. I don't think my sister's involvement with Thomas was accidental. I think our families have been working together for generations. The pieces started falling into place. The elaborate con wasn't just about my money or the resorts. They were after something bigger. Political connections, social influence, power that went beyond mere wealth. I pulled up the guest list for the gala on my laptop. Among the confirmed attendees, 3 senators, 2 tech billionaires, and a dozen other high-profile targets. The perfect hunting ground for con artists who specialized in infiltrating wealthy families. Rachel, I need you to send me those photos, and I need to know everything you can remember about conversations between your parents and the Lancasters. As I hung up, Sarah burst into the room. Sophie, you need to see this. She handed me a tablet displaying a news article. The headline made my blood run cold. Questions arise about Reynolds Resort Empire origins. Documents suggest illegal activities. They'd moved faster than I'd expected, already starting their smear campaign. But they'd made one crucial mistake. The documents they'd leaked contained details only someone involved in Elizabeth Morrison's death would know. I called Detective Wilson. How quickly can you get a warrant? For what? I know where you'll find proof of who killed Elizabeth Morrison. The same place they're storing evidence of every other crime they've committed. I smiled grimly. They kept trophies. The detective was silent for a moment. The Lancaster estate? No. Check Jessica's family home. The real mastermind has been hiding in plain sight all along. I ended the call and turned to Sarah. Contact every media outlet that ran that story. Tell them I'm giving an exclusive interview tomorrow. It's time to change the narrative. What about the gala? She asked. Oh, the gala is definitely still happening. In fact, I pulled up the seating chart on my computer. Let's make sure the Lancasters and Jessica's family have the best tables in the house, right where everyone can see them. As night fell, I stood at the window of my secure suite, watching the city lights below. Tomorrow, I would begin dismantling the carefully constructed world of lies the Lancasters had built. But tonight, I had one more call to make. I dialed a number I'd memorized years ago but never used. After 3 rings, a familiar voice answered. Hello, Elizabeth. Yes, the real Elizabeth Morrison. I think it's time you came out of hiding. There's a story that needs to be told, and you're the only one who can tell it. The pieces were falling into place. Soon, very soon, justice would be served. Not just for me, but for every person the Lancasters had ever hurt. But first, I had a gala to plan. And this time, I would make sure it was an event no one would ever forget. The morning of the interview, I sat in my private office reviewing the documents Elizabeth Morrison had sent overnight. After faking her death and escaping her abusive marriage to Thomas's uncle, she'd spent years gathering evidence against the Lancaster family. Now, that evidence would help expose decades of carefully orchestrated cons. 5 minutes until we go live, the producer announced, adjusting my microphone. I'd chosen to do the interview from my father's old office, now mine. Behind me, the wall displayed photos chronicling our family's genuine rise from a small carpentry business to a luxury resort empire. Let them see the truth of hard work and honest success. And we're live in 3, 2, 1. Mrs. Reynolds, thank you for speaking with us today, the interviewer began. Recent allegations have surfaced about the origins of your family's resort empire. How do you respond? I smiled, calm and collected. I'm glad you asked. Today, I'm not just defending my family's legacy. I'm exposing a decades-long conspiracy that has victimized numerous wealthy families across the country. For the next hour, I laid out the evidence. The real Lancaster family's mysterious death in a house fire. Thomas's grandfather assuming Charles Lancaster's identity. The string of marriages that ended in suspicious accidents or financial ruin. As I spoke, Sarah coordinated with news outlets, releasing documented proof of each claim. Then came the bombshell. I'd like to introduce someone, I said, gesturing off camera. Elizabeth Morrison walked into frame, very much alive and carrying a thick folder. Hello, Catherine, she said, addressing Thomas's mother directly through the camera. Did you really think I wouldn't keep proof of what your brother did to me? The interviewer was momentarily speechless. This wasn't part of the planned questions, but sometimes the best moments are unscripted. Elizabeth's voice was steady as she described how she'd discovered her husband's true nature, his connection to the fake Lancaster family, and how she'd escaped before they could silence her permanently. She'd spent years in hiding, watching as they attempted the same scheme with other families. But Sophie was different, Elizabeth said, smiling at me. She saw through them because she knows what real success looks like. It looks like her father's hands, calloused from actual work. It looks like genuine investment in people and places, not just social climbing and schemes. My phone buzzed quietly. A message from Detective Wilson. Warrant executed. You were right about Jessica's family home. Evidence vault found. Multiple arrests in progress. I kept my expression neutral as Elizabeth continued speaking, but inside I felt a weight lifting. Years of crimes were finally coming to light. After the interview, Sarah rushed in with updates. The story was exploding across social media. Thomas's mother had been arrested trying to board a private plane. Jessica's parents were in custody, but Thomas and Jessica themselves were still at large. And the gala? I asked. Everything's prepared exactly as you specified, Sarah confirmed, including the special seating arrangements and the other preparations. I nodded, thinking of the elaborate trap we'd set. The gala would proceed as planned, but with a few crucial modifications. Thomas and Jessica wouldn't be able to resist one last attempt at salvaging their plans, and when they did, they'd walk right into our waiting arms. Elizabeth joined me at the window, watching the sun set over the resort grounds. Your father would be proud, she said softly. He tried to expose them, you know. That's what got him killed. I know, I replied, thinking of the evidence Detective Wilson had found. But he also taught me something important. How to play the long game. The Lancasters thought they were patient, waiting months or years to execute their cons. I waited 5 years, learning everything about them, gathering evidence, building a network of allies. And now? Now we wait for the gala. Thomas and Jessica don't know it yet, but they've already RSVP'd to their own downfall. My phone buzzed again, Rachel with another update. They took the bait. Just overheard Jessica telling her friend she plans to make a dramatic entrance at the gala. Says she has something that will destroy you once and for all. I smiled, thinking of the surprises we had in store. Perfect. That evening, as I reviewed the final gala preparations, a thought struck me. The Lancasters had spent generations perfecting the art of destroying families through marriage. How fitting that their downfall would come at what they thought would be their greatest triumph. Another wealthy family's celebration. But first, there was one more piece to put in place. I picked up my phone and dialed a number. Governor? Yes, I need to modify your security arrangements for the gala. There's something you need to know about some of your other guests. The trap was set. Now all we had to do was wait for our guests of honor to arrive. The grand ballroom of my flagship resort sparkled with thousands of tiny lights. each one carefully placed to create an atmosphere of ethereal elegance. I stood at the top of the marble staircase, watching the guests arrive in their finest evening wear. Every detail was perfect, from the champagne being served in vintage crystal to the string quartet playing softly in the corner. "Security teams are in position," Sarah murmured, appearing at my elbow. "The governor's people are coordinating with Detective Wilson. No sign of Thomas or Jessica yet." I nodded, smoothing down my dress, a deep blue creation that reminded me of the ocean at dawn. My father used to say that was the best time to make important decisions, when the world was quiet and full of possibility. "Rachel just texted," Sarah continued. "Jessica's getting ready at their family estate. She's wearing white." Of course she was. The irony wasn't lost on me. The woman who'd helped orchestrate my marriage's destruction wearing the color of innocence to its funeral. The governor arrived with his security detail, giving me a subtle nod. He'd been shocked when I'd shown him evidence of how the Lancasters had been manipulating political connections for years, using information gathered from their victims to influence policy decisions. "Everything in place?" he asked quietly as I greeted him. "Just waiting for our guests of honor," I replied, matching his tone. The ballroom filled steadily. I spotted Elizabeth Morrison, elegantly disguised with a silver wig and subtle makeup, positioning herself near the entrance. She'd insisted on being here tonight, wanting to see the family that had nearly destroyed her finally face justice. At precisely 9 o'clock, a murmur rippled through the crowd. Thomas and Jessica had arrived. She was indeed wearing white, a designer gown that probably cost more than most people's cars. Thomas was beside her in a tuxedo, looking every inch the aristocrat he pretended to be. They paused at the entrance, clearly expecting to create a sensation. Instead, they were met with studied indifference. The other guests, carefully briefed, continued their conversations without acknowledging the newcomers. It was the worst possible response for people who thrived on social manipulation, being deemed irrelevant. I watched as they made their way through the crowd, noting how Jessica clutched her evening bag a little too tightly. According to Rachel, that bag contained what they thought was their trump card. Documents they believed would prove my father's business was built on fraud. "They're heading for the governor," Sarah whispered. "Right on schedule," I replied, moving into position. I intercepted them just as they reached the governor's group. "Thomas, Jessica, how lovely to see you both," I said, my voice carrying just far enough to draw attention from nearby guests. "Sophie," Thomas smiled that practiced smile. "Quite a gathering you've managed, though perhaps not for much longer." Jessica stepped forward, her own smile sharp as a blade. "We thought it was time everyone knew the truth about the Reynolds empire, about where the money really came from." I raised an eyebrow. "The truth? What an excellent idea." I turned to address the room, my voice clear and strong. "Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please?" The music faded. All eyes turned to us. "Many of you have read recent stories about my family's business," I began. "Tonight I'd like to tell you the real story, not just of the Reynolds family, but of the Lancasters. And," I turned to Jessica, whose smile had frozen in place, "of the Bennett family's role in one of the longest-running conspiracies in high society." Thomas moved to grab my arm, but found his path blocked by 2 security guards who seemed to materialize from nowhere. "You see," I continued, "this evening isn't just a celebration. It's an ending. And a beginning." I nodded to Sarah, who activated the ballroom's hidden screens. "Let me show you exactly what I mean." The screens came to life, displaying decades of evidence, photographs, documents, banking records. But most damning of all was the video beginning to play. Jessica's father, recorded just hours ago, confessing everything to Detective Wilson. "No," Jessica whispered, her face draining of color. "That's not... He wouldn't... Your father was very cooperative once we found the hidden room in your family estate," I said softly. "The one containing trophies from every family you've destroyed. Including my father's brake line." Thomas lunged forward, but he never reached me. The governor's security team moved with practiced efficiency, subduing him as Detective Wilson stepped out of the crowd, badge in hand. "Thomas Lancaster, or should I say Thomas Whitmore, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud," accessory to murder, and a rather impressive list of other charges we'll discuss at the station. As they led Thomas and Jessica away, I felt no triumph, no joy, only a deep sense of justice finally being served. The guests burst into concerned murmurs and exclamations, but I barely heard them. My eyes were fixed on the old photograph of my father now displayed on the screens, his kind face smiling down at the empire he'd built with honest work and real vision. But the night wasn't over yet. In fact, it was about to take an even more unexpected turn, one that would challenge everything I thought I knew about my own family's history. As the police led Thomas and Jessica away, Elizabeth Morrison approached me, holding a worn leather portfolio I'd never seen before. Her hands trembled slightly as she held it out. "Your father gave this to me for safekeeping," she said quietly. "He made me promise to give it to you only after the Lancasters were exposed. There's something you need to know about your mother." My mother. She'd died when I was too young to remember her, or so I'd always been told. My father rarely spoke of her, and the few photos I had showed a beautiful woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile. "What about my mother?" Elizabeth glanced around at the still buzzing crowd of gala attendees. "Not here. Come with me." We slipped away to my private office, where Sarah was waiting with Detective Wilson. The detective's face was grave as she set a laptop on my desk. "We found something else in the Bennett house," she said. "Something about your mother's accident." My hands shook as I opened the portfolio Elizabeth had given me. Inside were letters, dozens of them, all written in my mother's elegant handwriting. They were dated after her supposed death. "She's alive?" I whispered, hardly daring to believe it. "She was working with your father to expose the Lancasters," Elizabeth explained. "She discovered their connection to several suspicious deaths in prominent families, but when they realized she was investigating them, they threatened her," Detective Wilson continued. "Said they'd kill you and your father if she didn't disappear. So she did. Staged her own accident and went into hiding to protect you both." I sank into my chair, letters scattered across my desk. "All these years? Dad knew? He had to maintain the deception to keep you both safe," Elizabeth said gently. "But he never stopped working to bring down the people who took her from you. That's why they killed him when he got too close." Sarah stepped forward, tablet in hand. "There's more. The evidence we found tonight. It goes beyond the Lancasters and the Bennetts. There's a whole network of families involved in similar schemes across the country. Your mother, she's been helping other victims escape, building cases against these people all this time." My mind raced, remembering subtle details from my childhood, mysterious phone calls my father would take in his study, unexpected trips that he never quite explained, the way he taught me to always have a backup plan. "Where is she now?" I asked, my voice barely steady. Detective Wilson typed something on her laptop, then turned it toward me. A video call connected, and there she was, older than in the photos, but with the same kind eyes I remembered from the pictures. "My mother. Sophie," she said, her voice breaking. "My brave, brilliant girl. I've watched you from afar all these years, seen you grow into such an amazing woman. I never stopped loving you, never stopped hoping for this day." Tears streamed down my face as I touched the screen. "Mom, I have so many questions, and I'll answer every one of them," she promised. "I'm coming home, Sophie. Now that it's safe, now that you've finished what your father and I started, I'm coming home." A soft knock at the door interrupted us. Sarah opened it to reveal Rachel, looking anxious. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's something you need to see," she said. "Jessica, she left something in her cell phone, which the police just found. It's a video confession, but not about what we expected. It's about another family they were targeting, someone at the gala tonight." I looked back at my mother's image on the screen. "Mom, Go," she said with a gentle smile. "Do what needs to be done. I'll be here when you're finished. We have all the time in the world now." As I stood to leave, I noticed something else in the portfolio. A letter addressed to me in my father's handwriting, dated just days before his death. I tucked it into my evening bag. Whatever it said could wait until this last piece of business was finished. Walking back toward the ballroom, I felt different, stronger, more complete. The truth about my mother hadn't erased the years of loss. but it had given them meaning. Every step of my journey had been leading to this moment, to completing the work my parents had started. But first, there was one more family to save, one more truth to uncover. And based on Rachel's expression, time was of the essence. "Tell me everything," I said as we hurried through the corridor. Who were they targeting? Rachel's answer made me stop in my tracks. This wasn't just another wealthy family in danger. This was something much bigger. Something that could change everything we thought we knew about the Lancasters' operation. And somewhere in the crowded ballroom, their next victim was dancing, completely unaware of how close they had come to destruction. The video on Jessica's phone revealed their next target with brutal clarity. The young woman dancing gracefully across the ballroom was Amanda Brown, daughter of one of Asia's most prominent hoteliers. She wasn't just wealthy. She was about to inherit control of a hotel chain that would have given the Lancasters their biggest score yet. They were playing an even longer game than we realized, Rachel explained as we watched Amanda laugh with her friends. Thomas was just the practice run. Jessica's younger brother was being groomed to pursue Amanda. They were planning to announce their chance meeting at tonight's gala. I felt a chill run down my spine. Where is her brother now? Police just picked him up at the airport, Detective Wilson said, joining us. He was trying to flee the country. We found detailed dossiers on the Brown family in his possession. Everything from Amanda's favorite flowers to her father's medical history. I thought of my own experience, how thoroughly Thomas had studied me before our accidental first meeting. "We need to tell her." "Already done," the detective assured me. "Her father's security team has been briefed. They're quietly moving the whole family to a secure location now." I watched as Amanda was discreetly escorted from the ballroom, her bright smile never wavering as she bid her friends goodbye. She had no idea how close she'd come to losing everything. Just like I hadn't known, all those years ago. With the last potential victim safe, I could finally turn to my father's letter. My hands trembled as I broke the seal. "My dearest Sophie, if you're reading this, then you've done what your mother and I couldn't. You've exposed the truth about the Lancasters. I know the cost has been high. The pain of betrayal, the years of doubt and loneliness. I wish I could have spared you all of it. But you were always stronger than I gave you credit for. Like your mother, you have a steel core beneath your gentle heart. That's why I left you the resort empire without telling you the whole truth. I knew you would either find your own happiness with Thomas, if he proved different from his family, or you would be strong enough to uncover the truth yourself. Your mother didn't die in that accident, Sophie. She chose to disappear to protect us. Every major business decision I made, every expansion of our resort empire, was part of a larger plan, creating a safe network for victims of families like the Lancasters. Each resort has a hidden protocol, known only to a select few staff members, to protect and evacuate people in danger. The real legacy I leave you isn't the hotels or the wealth. It's this network of safety and justice. Your mother has been running it from the shadows all these years. Now it's time for you both to step into the light. I'm sorry I won't be there to see your reunion. Know that everything I did was out of love for you and your mother. The evidence you found, the allies you gathered, they were always there, waiting for you to be ready. Be happy, my darling daughter. Be strong. Be free. All my love, Dad. Tears blurred my vision as I finished reading. Sarah quietly handed me a tissue. "Mrs. Reynolds?" A staff member appeared at the door. "There's someone here to see you." I didn't need to ask who it was. I could feel it in my heart. My mother stood in the doorway, looking exactly like her image from the video call, but wonderfully, incredibly real. For a moment, we just stared at each other, 20 years of separation hanging between us. Then she opened her arms, and I was running to her like a little girl, breathing in her familiar scent of jasmine and home. "My Sophie," she whispered, holding me tight. "My brave, brilliant girl." Later that night, long after the last gala guests had departed, my mother and I sat in my father's old office, our office now, planning the future. The resort empire would continue, but with a new secret mission, providing sanctuary for those escaping situations like mine. Elizabeth Morrison would help us identify and assist other victims of similar schemes. Thomas, Jessica, and their entire network would face justice. But their downfall wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of something far more important. "What do you think, Sophie?" my mother asked, looking over the plans we'd drawn up. "Are you ready for this new chapter?" I looked around the office, at the photo of my father on the wall, at the resort lights twinkling below, at the strong, amazing woman beside me who had sacrificed everything to protect me. I thought of all the other families we could help, all the lives we could save. "Yes," I said, squeezing her hand. "I'm ready." As dawn broke over the Caribbean, painting the sky in shades of hope, I felt truly at peace for the first time in years. The carpenter's daughter had not only protected her father's legacy, she had transformed it into something greater than anyone could have imagined. And this time, I wasn't standing alone.